Nothing quite matches the experience I had a few weeks back. Late one evening, I headed out to check on the cattle. They'd been acting unusual lately and not their usual selves. The air that night carried an odd stench, enough to make me gag. My days on the ranch are filled with diverse tasks from dawn till dusk. I'm feeding the cattle, fixing fences, and tending to our equipment. I've always cherished the rhythm of ranch life, the simplicity of it, and the bond I've formed with the land and its creatures. I've grown accustomed to the local wildlife over the years. I can distinguish a coyote's howl from a mile away or recognize a bear's tracks in the mud. Rattlesnakes, deer, even the occasional bobcat have crossed my path, but nothing could prepare me for that night. The cattle's strange behavior, the unfamiliar scent in the air, and those unsettling sounds. It felt like nature was playing by a different set of rules, and the sense of displacement was deeply disconcerting. Beyond the off-kilter behavior and the smell, I began hearing strange noises echoing through the fields. A cacophony of yelps and growls, unlike any I'd heard before. Initially, I thought it might be a coyote or a wolf, but something about it felt off. Sure, I've encountered coyotes and wolves, but this was different. The sounds were primal, reverberating from deep within with a pitch and resonance that set my nerves on edge. The yelps weren't the typical cries of a coyote, and they were more akin to haunting howls, oscillating in a way that made my skin crawl. As for the growls, they weren't the usual warnings of a bear or a mountain lion. These were profound, echoing across the plains with a power that left me chilled to the core. There was a primal quality to them, reminiscent of a primordial call, yet distorted and unnervingly loud. Despite the strangeness, I pressed on with my duties. Then suddenly I spotted it, looming beyond the tree line. This creature was massive, easily 9 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a formidable chest. Its eyes, black and piercing, seemed to gleam in the moonlight, set atop a head that seamlessly merged with its body. Unlike typical wildlife encounters, this creature didn't react as expected. Most animals would either flee or attack, but this being simply stood there, observing me with an eerie calmness. Its movements were fluid, almost rhythmic, as it shifted its weight with an unsettling grace. Those piercing eyes never wavered, studying my every move. I couldn't decipher its intentions, whether it was curious, cautious, or something else entirely, but one thing was clear. It held dominion over its domain, and I was an intruder. Its stoic demeanor and unwavering gaze left me dumbfounded, a silent confrontation that spoke volumes. I'll admit I was paralyzed despite my usual resilience. Encountering something so inexplicable shook me to the core. In those tense moments, a whirlwind of emotions swept over me. The initial shock gave way to a blend of fear and fascination. Despite my instincts screaming at me to flee, I found myself rooted to the spot, captivated by this otherworldly presence. I didn't stick around to see what would unfold. I made a beeline for home, not stopping until I reached safety. In the days that followed, I noticed a shift in the cattle's behavior. They seemed more on edge, huddling together and displaying signs of distress. Their lowing in the night echoed a sense of unease that mirrored my own. As for me, I found myself constantly on edge. I patrolled the fields more frequently, especially at dawn and dusk. Floodlights were installed around the barn, and I doubled down on perimeter checks. The serenity of ranch life was replaced by a heightened vigilance that lingers still. I sought the counsel of a local wildlife expert, hoping for answers. Yet, like me, he was stumped, suggesting it might be an oversized bear or a misidentified moose, but deep down, we both knew it didn't fit the bill. To this day, I can't shake the memory of that night. I find myself looking over my shoulder more often, attuned to the whispers of the wilderness. That's my tale. Maybe someone out there can shed light on what I encountered. Every Thanksgiving, it's a tradition for my family to journey down to New Jersey to spend time with my grandparents. As they're getting older, I feel it's crucial for my 2 boys to cherish these moments with them before anything unfortunate happens. They reside on a vast piece of land not too distant from the Wharton State Forest. It's not about wealth. This land has been in our family for over a century. While my grandfather once ran a farm on it, those days have long passed. Our stay was slated for 5 days, just me, my wife, our 2 sons, and our grandparents, making for a serene Thanksgiving. Or so we thought. Given my grandparents' early bedtime habits, we opted for a Thanksgiving lunch rather than dinner. Around 6 p.m., with dusk settling in, my wife and I were finishing up the cleaning while my grandparents relaxed in the living room. Our eldest son requested to take his 3-year-old brother outside to play, and we saw no harm in it. A small pond lay about 100 yards from the back of the house, roughly 20 feet wide and shallow. We cautioned our son to steer clear of it, not out of fear of danger, but to avoid accidental soaking. He's a responsible kid, so we felt comfortable letting them play outdoors, but that was our first mistake. After about 20 minutes, as I was wrapping up the cleaning, something prompted me to glance out the kitchen window. The view encompassed a significant portion of the property, including the pond. Though the sun was nearly gone, I discerned a large figure, head bent down, near the pond. Without hesitation, I rushed outside, assuming it might be a deer, a common sight in the area. Yet, I couldn't locate my kids. The back door's view was obstructed by my grandmother's extensive garden and tall rose bushes, so I circled around. As I rounded the rose bushes, I spotted my sons about 100 feet away, crouched behind a large tree stump. It seemed my eldest had his hand clamped over his brother's mouth, who was becoming restless. As I approached, I got a clearer view of the creature, and a wave of panic swept over me. It was no deer. This thing stood as tall as a large horse, easily 7 feet high, with thick curled horns reminiscent of a ram's. Strangely, I could have sworn it had wings tucked against its body. An inexplicable dread washed over me, urging me to flee, but abandoning my children was inconceivable. Another fear gripped me, the fear of this creature noticing us, so I dropped to the ground and crawled towards my kids. Halfway there, they spotted me, and I signaled for them to stay put. Upon reaching them, I saw relief wash over their faces, peeking over the stump. I noticed the creature still lingering, though something had diverted its attention to the tree line. Our situation was dire. I couldn't crawl with my youngest, and separating wasn't an option. We had to run. The idea of being seen paralyzed me with terror, but protecting my children trumped everything. After plotting our escape route, we bolted, me carrying the youngest. As we neared safety, a ghastly sound pierced the air, a mix of bleating and screaming. It threw me off balance, but we pressed on, reaching the back door where my wife stood, wide-eyed. We tumbled inside as she slammed the door shut, plunging into silence. The eerie noise continued, circling the house until it gradually faded away. We were a bit bruised from our hasty entrance, but otherwise unharmed. My grandparents, oblivious to the commotion, couldn't offer any explanation. Despite the unsettling encounter, we stayed another day before cutting our trip short. Leaving my grandparents with that creature nearby weighed on me, but they'd lived there peacefully for 70 years. Sure, I've heard tales of creatures like the New Jersey Devil, and what we saw matched the descriptions. But it couldn't possibly be real, could it? Let me tell you about an experience that's been weighing on my mind for a few years now. It all happened during a summer visit to my grandparents in New Mexico. The rugged desert terrain and the captivating night sky always drew me in. I was taking a break from college filled with youthful curiosity and a thirst for adventure. Instead of stumbling upon ancient artifacts or hidden tribes as I had imagined, fate had a different plan for me. Close to my grandparents' place lay an abandoned ranch, a subject of whispered tales among the locals. These stories piqued my curiosity, adding a sense of mystery and allure to the place. One evening, fueled by these legends, I embarked on a detective-like quest, but the journey was long and solitary and surrounded by vast expanses of arid land. The howling wind and the eerie silence conjured images of a scene straight out of a suspenseful movie. As twilight descended, I reached the weather-beaten gate of the ranch. Its decrepit appearance exuded a profound sense of desolation. The fence was in disrepair, and the main house, a dilapidated wooden structure, seemed barely able to withstand the gentlest breeze. Time seemed to have frozen in this forsaken place. Apart from a solitary windmill, an unsettling stillness pervaded the air, as if the whispers of the past lingered in the shadows. Pushing open the gate, I began my exploration, venturing into the barn, cellar, and well, absorbing every detail. As time passed, the eerie tranquility of the ranch enveloped me like a familiar shroud. Just when I thought the day would pass uneventfully, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught my attention. There was an unusual vibration in the air, more felt than heard, and it was a sensation that crawled beneath my skin, accompanied by an unshakable feeling of being observed. As the strange hum intensified, I couldn't pinpoint its source. Then a chill wind swept past me, carrying with it faint whispers that stirred a primal fear within me. The desert nights were cold, but this chill was different, penetrating to the bone. Heading toward the source of the sound, a primal instinct urged me to retreat. It was as though my senses detected an unseen threat, urging me to heed its warning. The air grew heavy, pregnant with anticipation like the calm before a storm. I felt out of my element, a stranger in this unfamiliar realm. Navigating through the darkness, I stumbled upon an ominous sight. An otherworldly glow emanated from the remnants of an old barn, casting eerie shadows that danced in the pale light. And then I felt it, a presence lurking in the darkness, observing me with unseen eyes. The surge of excitement and fear was overwhelming and rooting me to the spot. Suddenly, the light flared, revealing a figure standing amidst the shadows. Tall and imposing, it stood at least 6, maybe 7 feet tall. Its form resembled that of a human, yet distorted and alien. Its sleek, scaled skin reflected the moonlight, while bright yellow eyes pierced the darkness with an unsettling intensity. The head, reminiscent of a prehistoric creature, bore a semblance to a reptilian dinosaur from the annals of science. Its movements were graceful, yet predatory, accentuated by the menacing black claws that adorned its hands. As I stood transfixed, the creature seemed to communicate silently, and its gaze penetrating my very soul. My heart raced, and a sense of primal fear gripped me, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away. Eventually, I summoned the courage to leave, though a part of me yearned to stay and unravel the mystery further. As I made my way back to my grandparents' house, trembling with adrenaline, the memory of that encounter remained etched in my mind. In the years since, I've often pondered the nature of that creature. Was it a yet undiscovered species, or perhaps an extraterrestrial visitor? The thought of sharing my encounter with others seemed ludicrous, risking not only my credibility but my sanity as well. Yet, with each passing rumor of reptilian beings, I can't help but feel a shiver of uncertainty. That night I encountered something beyond comprehension, and a mystery that continues to haunt me to this day. Greetings from the serene heart of the Ozark Mountains in my beloved Arkansas. The Ozarks have always been a cherished retreat, offering the tranquility of wilderness, meandering hiking trails, and captivating waterfalls. It's an ideal destination for those seeking solace amidst the woodland solitude. Now let me unfold the narrative of an unexpected turn during my solo backpacking venture in this enchanting realm. It was the month of November, marked by a hazy, wintry gray sky and a noticeable chill lingering in the air. The overcast conditions hinted at an imminent rain, though the persistent sun attempted to break through the clouds. Late afternoon stealthily enveloped the landscape, transitioning from a panoramic view to the encroaching shadows. Venturing off the well-trodden path on a whim, I pursued the faint sound of rushing water, anticipating the discovery of a secluded backcountry waterfall. Fate, however, had different plans. Instead, I stumbled upon an aged and dilapidated cabin nestled deep within the woods. Though showing signs of decay, the cabin's roof promised shelter from the impending rain, prompting me to decide on spending the night within its weathered walls. An unsettling sensation gripped me, a feeling of foreignness, despite the evident abandonment of the cabin for years. Perhaps it was the structure itself, with its floorboards groaning like ancient bones beneath my boots. The air inside carried a stale, moldy odor, a testament to years of neglect and wood decay. Trying to shake off the disquiet, I focused on the pragmatic aspect of avoiding the impending storm in the comfort of the cabin rather than braving it in a tent. As I illuminated the surroundings with my flashlight, the remnants of a makeshift kitchen came into view. An old rusty wood stove stood as a relic of the past. Setting up my sleeping pad and bag, I prepared a modest dinner, a simple dehydrated backpacking meal. Outside, the wind intensified, moaning through the trees like a symphony of nature. A moth-eaten sofa adorned one wall of the cabin, presenting the option of a makeshift bed. Skeptical of its condition, I opted for the floor, which seemed the wiser choice. The cold settled in, but I had adequately prepared for the night. The storm outside reached its peak, casting an even darker shroud over the surroundings. With resignation, I nestled into my sleeping bag, succumbing to the impending slumber. Sometime later, I awoke to an unsettling silence, an absolute stillness that deviated from the customary nocturnal white noise of the forest. The storm had ceased, leaving an eerie quietude. My senses signaled that I was no longer alone, a feeling of intrusion pervading the air. A distant thump echoed outside the cabin, causing my heart to race. I lay petrified, wide-eyed, and unable to shake off the gripping terror. Peering through the solitary window, I discerned a foreboding figure enveloped in shadows, towering at a height of 8 or 9 feet. Initially mistaking it for a deer, I soon realized the proportions were unnatural. The air carried a repugnant stench of decay, a nauseating blend of rotting flesh and death. As I cautiously approached the door, a 2-inch gap revealed the creature's grotesque form. The creature's legs, elongated and hoofed, and resembled those of an elk. Its emaciated body, adorned with raw, bloody wounds oozing infection, exuded an otherworldly horror. It appeared to be a severely ill creature surviving against the odds. However, it was the face that unveiled a sinister reality, a bone-white skull with no eyes or nose, only an open deer skull. The creature, though lacking sensory organs, seemed to detect my presence, sniffing the air with an unsettling intent. With silent prayers, I dared not move, paralyzed by fear. The night stretched endlessly, a relentless ordeal. As the first light of dawn dispersed the darkness, the demonic entity faded into obscurity. Only then did I exhale a sigh of relief, but I remained within the cabin until the sun stood high, ensuring the creature's departure. My expedition concluded prematurely as I retraced my steps to the safety of human habitation. The abandoned cabin, once a mystery, now harbored a profound reason for its desolation. Questions lingered about the fate of previous occupants, whether they wisely departed or succumbed to the malevolent presence. Seeking solace in shared experiences, I invite others to share their encounters with such entities. The unsettling memory of that night persists, leaving me to ponder the true nature of the creature, a harbinger of evil or a misunderstood entity minding its own existence. Uncertainty lingers, challenging my perceptions of the horrifying and the benign. I grew up in this old apartment on the less fortunate side of town. The building was straight out of the 1950s, with those creaky wooden doors that gave it a vintage charm. It wasn't much to look at, but it had character. On my 10th birthday, my mom gifted me this huge book filled with ghost stories. I was obsessed with that kind of stuff, and so was my little brother. We would huddle together at night, devouring those spooky tales before bedtime. Oddly enough, instead of scaring us, they had a calming effect. One night, as we were deep into a particularly chilling story, our mom called lights out. She left the door slightly open because my brother was afraid of the dark. I lay there gazing at the cracked door when suddenly this strange figure dashed past in the hallway. I was spooked, thinking it was my imagination until my brother shouted, "Mom, was that you?" Mom rushed out, brandishing a bat, searching every nook and cranny of the apartment, but whatever it was, it had vanished into thin air. The following weeks were eerie. The incident lingered in the air, and we couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. We confided in a few close friends and relatives, but opinions varied from dismissing it as a dream to entertaining the idea of ghosts. Then, out of nowhere, it reappeared. One night, I heard a peculiar giggle echoing down the hallway. Peering through the crack in the door, I spotted a small shadow darting past. This mysterious presence had made itself at home in our apartment, and to our surprise, it became a regular occurrence. One evening, our bedroom door creaked open, revealing a gaunt figure with eerie red eyes standing there. I was terrified, yet somehow angry. "Who are you?" I stammered, but the creature just smirked before vanishing into thin air. Sleep became a rare commodity as we delved into the realm of strange creatures, eventually identifying it as an imp. With a name for our visitor, things felt a tad more manageable, but our lives were forever changed. We became fascinated with the supernatural, questioning the world around us in ways we never had before. What started as a love for ghost stories turned into a real-life encounter we couldn't shake off, and then, as suddenly as it appeared, the visits ceased. Life in our apartment returned to its mundane rhythm, but we were different. We couldn't unsee what we had experienced. As we grew older, my brother pursued science, seeking rational explanations, while I found solace in history and literature where mysteries were embraced. Despite our divergent paths, our shared experience kept us connected. Our upbringing in that old apartment shaped us, instilling a curiosity for the unknown. Even now, the memory of that little demon lingers, a reminder that there's more to this world than meets the eye. Though it never returned, its presence lingered in our minds, reminding us that reality is often stranger than fiction. We grew up straddling the line between the seen and unseen, open to the mysteries our world had to offer. They say buildings possess a unique essence, harboring distinctive personalities and the lingering echoes of memories, occasionally haunted by unsettling specters. My story unfolded a little over 3 years ago in the vibrant city of Chicago, where I toiled through the graveyard shift at the towering structure known as the Willis Tower. It was the eve of April 17th, a date etched in my memory as my mother's birthday. A decade as a security guard affords you a front-row seat to an array of peculiar situations. The gig was solid, paying well, and the night shifts at the tower were generally serene. With surveillance cameras spanning from the ground to the Sky Lounge, my responsibility resembled that of a vigilant overseer, ensuring the safety of an almost deserted building during the nocturnal hours. My routine involved completing regular rounds, then settling into the monitor room with a cup of coffee in hand. The atmosphere within the room was accompanied by the hum of monitors and the rhythmic flickering of fluorescent lights, creating an oddly comforting ambiance. I'd immerse myself in the silent narratives unfolding on the screens, capturing the empty building in its nightly repose. Typically, nothing out of the ordinary transpired. However, that particular night proved to be an exception. Around 3 a.m, the monotony prompted me to take a stroll, a necessary reprieve from the extended periods of sitting. The route was well established, starting from the ground floor, ascending stairwells, scrutinizing crucial points like entrances and exits, ensuring offices were secure, and then descending. Given the enormity of the Willis Tower, the process consumed a considerable amount of time, but I embraced the routine, finding a certain tranquility in the process. The ground floor, adorned with dim lighting, echoed with a sense of emptiness. As I traversed the service elevator upwards, higher floors revealed themselves as shadowy expanses, with minimal lighting navigating through deserted corridors. Motion sensor lights, although installed for security, sometimes flickered with an eerie quality. Passing through sections where the lights cast irregular shadows always imparted a peculiar sensation, though my seasoned tenure made such occurrences more fascinating than disconcerting. Nothing caught my attention until I reached the 30th floor. Walking down a corridor, the light at the far end faltered and extinguished briefly. Upon its revival, a fleeting glimpse of something anomalous registered on the surveillance monitor, a peculiar shadow or movement, something defying the ordinary. The routine familiarity of the night began to unravel, replaced by an unsettling chill, an otherworldly disquiet. Pressing forward, the tower embraced an eerie silence. My footsteps echoed, resonating as the only audible presence in the deserted expanse. Alone in the midst of the night within the colossal structure, imagination could weave illusions, playing tricks that strained my attempts at rationalization. Returning to the monitor room, a decision to review the CCTV footage emerged. Pulling up the feed from a corresponding floor, I witnessed the familiar emptiness of the hallway. Then it transpired, the gradual manifestation of a hazy figure on the screen, transparent and indistinct, resembling a human form ensconced in an unnatural fog. It defied conventional substance. The figure glided through the hallway, unaffected by physical barriers, casting no shadow. It existed in a surreal state, as if a wandering soul had become entrapped within the office building's confines. Mesmerized, I observed the erratic movements of the figure, flickering in and out of existence, wandering aimlessly in the silent corridors. Its hollow, glowing eyes serving as the only semblance of a face. Although the encounter likely spanned a few minutes, it unfolded in a perpetually stretched reality, inducing a profound sense of fear and disbelief. As abruptly as it appeared, the figure dissipated, leaving behind an unsettling void within the mundane normalcy of the hallway. The remainder of my shift transpired in a fog of anxious anticipation, eyes fixated on the monitors, subconsciously tracking any deviation from the spectral glow. Yet the enigmatic apparition refrained from making a reappearance. In the subsequent days, doubt crept in, prompting me to question the validity of my late-night encounter. Admittedly, fear lingered, a fear of what the lost entity might signify for the grandeur of the Willis Tower, a fear of concealed secrets within its towering walls, and an apprehension of encountering it again. The mystery endured, and while I never unraveled its identity, one certainty lingered. I could not erase the memory of that night. In that dimly lit corridor, my suspicions were validated by the spectral dance captured on the security monitors. An indescribable presence lingered, a testament to the fact that even in the apparent solitude of towering glass and concrete, we are never truly alone. My role as a security guard amid these colossal structures has imparted this immutable truth.